Hi there, and welcome to another installment in the AgilePoint Generative AI video series. In this video, we're going to show you how AgilePoint can take PDFs and turn them into working business applications in mere moments. Now we have two scenarios for you today. The first one is fairly straightforward, while the second is going to increase the complexity significantly. So as you're seeing here on screen, my design team has created a college enrollment form using Figma and exported it as a PDF. So walking through the form, you can see here there are three major sections: general information, academics, and family history. And in terms of the fields, you're seeing here a date field, various text fields, drop downs, radio buttons, and the list goes on. So let's move into the app builder. We'll give this PDF over to AgilePoint. It's going to ingest and understand it and suggest fields that we can use for our application. Okay, so we'll get started by adding an app. For today, we're going to create a form-based application, and let's just give this a name. I'm going to drop this into a category. All right, now you're seeing here, AgilePoint is asking me if I'd like to create a widget form. If you're new to AgilePoint, you may not yet know that a widget form is essentially a form that is created with the express purpose of hosting on a landing page. So that doesn't apply to us today, so we're going to leave not required selected. And of course, we're going to create our application using AI. Now you're seeing a number of different options here on screen, everything from letting AI decide, where I can supply a description of the application that I'd like built, using a PDF, image, or Excel sheet. As we mentioned earlier, we're going to go with a PDF for today. Now in the next screen, I'm selecting where I'm bringing that PDF from. This could be hosted in a number of existing document repositories, and I would simply browse to that location, or I can simply drag and drop or browse through the folder structure on my PC. Okay, so let's drag and drop it. And as we mentioned, AgilePoint is now working to understand, ingest the PDF, and will make a number of suggestions as far as fields to use for the app. Okay, so as you can see here, a number of fields have been suggested, but we can always massage the results that have come back by adding new fields, reclassifying them, and so on. Okay, so the first thing I want to do here is find the student ID field and move that up to the top under general information. So for this, I'm going to select the field and simply drag it up to the top. Drop that underneath general information. Now, as we mentioned, we can always add new fields. So to do that, I'm going to add a student email and phone number. Okay, so let's do that underneath the student name. Call this email. Okay, and let's recategorize that to a type of email. And let's add one more field for the student's phone number. Okay, so let's look for the state field. All right, so as you're seeing here, this is suggested to be a type of text box. So I'm going to change this to a pick list. There's pick list. So you're seeing here, drop down list. Now, in my case, I should already have a pick list with the US states. So I'm going to hit the wheel and I'm going to select from an existing pick list. Just search for state. And we're going to do the same thing here with country. Now, as you're seeing here, I can also generate options in line, but again, I should have a pick list with countries. Okay. Okay, so next we're going to work with the grade in the 10th and 12th classes. Okay, so we'll just call this grade in class so we can reuse it. Okay, and as you're seeing here, it's suggested a pick list with values from A+ all the way down to F. Okay, so we're going to rename this to grade in class, again, so that we can reuse this. And we're going to go ahead and configure that same pick list for the grade in 12th class. Okay, so let's move down to the father and mother's blood group. Okay, now here, I know I can reuse some existing pick lists. So let's go back to the wheel. We're going to search for a pick list. Blood group. Perfect. And the same thing here with the mother's blood group. Okay, and lastly here for family income, what you're going to see is that AgilePoint is going to find an exact match for the pick list name. So I do already have a pick list with family income, so I'm going to go ahead and use that. And then lastly, notice that AgilePoint has suggested a 3-column layout, which correlates with the 3 columns that we had seen in our PDF. Okay, I'm just going to give my entity a unique name, and you'll notice down below under primary field that student ID has already been selected. For our purposes, that works well, but as you're seeing here, I can always recategorize it to any other field. Next, AgilePoint is bringing me to a list of common application artifacts. These are things that I can always add later, but it's nice to have a checklist for me. This would include things like connection strings to external systems, document repositories for any attached files, style sheets, users, images, JavaScript, and notifications. But again, we can always add these things later. I'm going to go with default security in my application. And with this, AgilePoint is now assembling the application for me. So in just a second, you're going to see that a number of elements have been pre-created for me. Things like data entry forms, ability to edit records, views, things of that nature. So in just a second, we'll be dropped into the application designer where we can validate the application and publish. Okay, so as you're seeing here, everything has been pre-created, a new form, an update form, various views for all records, as well as recently created or recently modified records, and a lookup for each of those. So now we'll just click OK, validate the application, and we're ready to go. Okay, so here's our application. Let's go ahead and bring this up in preview. Okay, so everything's looking pretty good. I have my date fields, my drop-down lists, so everything is ready. So now all that's left is to save and check it in, publish it, okay, now from here, I can set permissions, I can notify users there's a new app ready for use, or we can simply launch it. Okay, so here are the views that we talked about for all records, recently created and recently modified. And if I click the plus icon here, I can add a new record into my college enrollment application. Okay, so with scenario 1 out of the way, let's move on over to scenario 2. Okay, so moving on to scenario 2, where we've increased the complexity. The first thing I want to point out is that PDFs don't have sections in the same way your AgilePoint application might. They have headers. So here we have various text boxes for first and last name, date of birth, phone number, email address. The physical address itself has multiple lines of text. The referral section appear to be checkboxes. a file attachment to upload my resume, recommendations, and etc. So let's see how AgilePoint ingests these and how it intelligently understands these components and transposes them into AgilePoint elements. Okay, so again, we're going to move over to the app builder and add a new app. Again, we're going to go with the form-based variety. And we'll just give this a name. Drop it into a category. Now again, we're going to skip the widget form. And again, we're going to go with the PDF option. All right, now rather than browse from Box, Google Drive, or OneDrive, I'm simply going to drag and drop from my local file system. And as you're seeing, AgilePoint is working to understand and transpose all of the elements from the PDF over into the AgilePoint context. Okay, so as you're seeing here, we have our results. Things like the headers that we saw for the various sections in the PDF have been transposed to an AgilePoint context of tab. So what we'll do now is just scan through a few of the fields and see where we can recategorize as appropriate. Okay, so things like the birth date has been transposed to a date control, but phone number, let's go ahead and recategorize that. So that will be of type phone. As you can see here, address has multiple lines. Now for things like region, we can always use an existing pick list. Change that to a pick list. As you can see here, AgilePoint is recognizing that a pick list already exists. So we can go ahead and select yes and simply reuse that existing pick list. How are you referred to us is a pick list that I think we'll have to regenerate here. All right, so you can see here, already understood all of the values from our pick list. So we can go ahead and click save. Here for upload resume, as you can see here, AgilePoint understood that and has suggested a file upload control. Okay, so everything is looking pretty good here. We have a couple of additional file uploads for the first and second recommendation, a 2-column layout, which works great for us. So let's go ahead and click next and move along. Okay, we're going to give our entity a unique name. And down below, as you're seeing here, there is an option to select a primary field. So let's go with the student's last name. We'll select next. Okay, now AgilePoint is taking us to a list of common application artifacts. These are all things that we can add later on as needed, but it's nice to have a checklist of things like connection strings to external systems, repositories for any attached files, CSS, users, images, JavaScript, and notifications. But again, we can always add all of these things later. I'm going to go with default security. Again, something I can change later as needed. And lastly, AgilePoint is going to drop us in the designer with a completed application where all we need to do is validate that everything looks good, publish it, and we're ready to go. Okay, so AgilePoint has created a number of application artifacts on our behalf. We have a new form to add new records, an update form where we can modify existing records, as well as 3 views. All records, as well as recently created and recently modified, with a lookup for each of those views. Okay, so just dropped into the designer here, and as you're seeing, everything looks pretty good, so our application is ready for use. Okay, so that concludes the content for the generative AI video for PDFs. Thank you so much for watching. Until next time.